Hi everyone, and welcome to Hauntora. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This is the place where we explore the darkest, most deeply unsettling, true horror stories the internet has to offer. And if you've been here before, welcome back. Genuinely glad you're here. I'll admit, I came into this week thinking I had a handle on what I wanted to say. And then I went back through the stories one more time and lost that completely. There's a particular kind of quiet that settles in after you've spent too long inside something that doesn't sit right. That's where I've been living this week. I think by the end of tonight, you'll know what I mean. Before anything else, thank you to everyone who keeps showing up, who sends those messages at strange hours, who tells me a story followed them into the next day. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. This channel exists because of that, and I never want to lose sight of it. Links are at the top of the description. Always will be. Tonight I've got two stories. The first one got under my skin in a way I could at least sit with. The second one, I'm going to be honest, I've been putting off finishing the script for it for weeks. Not because it's complicated, because once it's out there, I can't unfeel it. Some things work like that. Comments open at the end. Come tell me where you're at. I'll be reading. Lights down. Get somewhere you feel safe. Let's go. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm not someone who gets spooked by the woods. That's not a personality trait I'm proud of. It's just the result of spending the better part of a decade doing field work in places most people only see on maps. I did my graduate thesis on white-tailed deer behavior in fragmented forest systems. After that, I took a contract work with state wildlife agencies, population surveys, habitat assessments, the kind of slow, methodical data collection that requires you to be alone in remote terrain. For days at a time, no drama, no romance, just transects, camera traps, and a lot of instant oatmeal eaten in the dark. I tell you this because it matters. Because what I'm about to describe is not the account of someone who goes looking for strange things. I'm the person who, when a branch snaps in the dark 30 feet from her tent, rolls over and goes back to sleep. I've been that person my whole career. I was that person until the hollow. The survey was a standard white-tailed deer population estimate for a county wildlife management unit in the Appalachian Highlands, a stretch of ridgeline and cove forest that hadn't been formally surveyed in 11 years. The agency contact told me the area was lightly used. No active hunting leases in my specific zone. No infrastructure to speak of. A forest road got me within 2 miles of the survey boundary. After that, everything was on foot. I set up base camp on the third day, once I'd identified a flat site near a reliable water source. A small creek running out of the upper hollow, cold and clear, smelling of wet stone and leaf tannin. Good deer sign in the area. Rubs on the saplings. Fresh tracks in the creek mud. Scrapes along the bench above camp. Exactly what I'd been sent to find. I put out 6 trail cameras along likely travel corridors, established my transect routes, made notes, ate dinner, went to sleep. The first morning I found the teeth. They were arranged in a loose circle, maybe 8 inches across, on the flat rock I used as a prep surface outside my tent. Small teeth. Deer, I thought immediately, which made sense given the habitat. Incisors, a few premolars, 9 of them total, placed with their roots down, tips up, evenly spaced, like someone had taken time with it. I picked them up, looked at them, put them in a sample bag, out of habit. My first thought was pack rat behavior. Rodents sometimes cache unusual objects, but pack rats don't arrange things in circles. My second thought was that I'd somehow knocked them out of my own gear without noticing, which made even less sense. I filed it away as unexplained and ran my transects. The second morning there were bones, small ones, metacarpals, a few phalanges, what looked like a partial jaw from a juvenile deer, placed at the threshold of my tent. Not scattered, placed. In a row, parallel, facing the tent door. Neat the way a deliberate thing is neat, not the way weather or animals are neat. I stood there in the gray early light looking at them for a long time. Then I took photos, bagged them, and did what rational people do. I constructed an explanation. Local kids. The forest road was only 2 miles out. Teenagers with too much time and enough woods savvy to move quietly at night. A prank. Maybe they'd spotted my camp on their way through, decided to have some fun with the out-of-town biologist. It was annoying more than anything. I made a note to check my cameras that evening, see if they'd caught anything on the travel corridors. The cameras had caught plenty of deer, nothing else. Third morning, more bones, more teeth. This time arranged in a longer line leading from the tree line to my tent. Not touching the tent, stopping about 3 feet short, like a path or a direction. I checked the ground around them carefully. The soil was damp enough to hold prints. There was nothing, no boot prints, no shoe treads, just the soil and the bones and the space between them that should have held some evidence of whoever put them there and didn't. That was when the feeling shifted. Not fear, not yet. More like the cognitive discomfort of a problem that won't resolve. I'm trained to observe, and what I was observing refused to fit any framework I trusted. I pulled all 6 cameras, downloaded the cards, sat in my tent with my laptop and went through the footage. 5 cameras, deer, a red fox, a raccoon investigating camera 2 for 11 uninteresting minutes. Camera 6, the one I'd positioned on the slope above camp, angled down to cover the approach from the upper hollow, had footage from 2:14 a.m. I watched it 3 times before I trusted what I was seeing. 4 figures, moving through the lower edge of frame in single file, coming down from the upper hollow. The timestamp read 2:14 to 2:19, 5 minutes of footage. They were moving on all 4s, not crawling, not injured, moving with a kind of ease that was wrong in a way I kept trying to recategorize and couldn't. The joints weren't moving wrong. That's the thing I keep coming back to. It wasn't that they looked broken or distorted. It was that they looked practiced, like something that had decided at some point that this was simply how it moved. They came into the camp perimeter, spread out, moved around the tent in a slow arc, and then one of them stopped at the mesh door panel and pressed its face against it. It stayed like that for 40 seconds, 40 seconds of just listening. The tent fabric moved slightly from the pressure, and then it pulled back, rejoined the others, and they moved back up the slope into the hollow, and the frame went dark. I sat with my laptop open for a long time after that. The footage was real. I know what compression artifacts look like. I know what lens distortion does. I've reviewed thousands of hours of trail camera footage in my career. This was not a glitch. This was not deer. This was not teenagers. I broke camp in under 20 minutes. That's important. I didn't panic. Panic gets people hurt in the field. I was methodical. I packed in order of priority: electronics, food, navigation. Left the tent stakes because pulling them would have taken time I didn't want to spend. Walked the 2 miles to the forest road in the dark with my headlamp on low because I didn't want the beam visible from the ridge. And I don't entirely know why that felt important, but it did. I drove 40 minutes to the county seat. The road authority office shared a building with the Forestry Service. It was the first county building I found open at 7 a.m. The woman at the front desk was 50s, practical looking, the kind of person who processes paperwork without registering it. I showed her the footage on my laptop, explained where I'd been camped, gave her the approximate location relative to the forest road. She watched the footage, didn't flinch, didn't lean in closer, didn't look at me, didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "You were in the wrong hollow." I asked her what she meant. She said, "Don't go back." I asked her to explain. She looked at me the way people look at you when they've decided the conversation is over and are waiting for you to figure that out. She slid my laptop back across the counter, said she'd make sure the agency contact was notified that the survey site needed to be relocated. That was it. That was the whole conversation. I filed a report with the county sheriff's office that afternoon. The deputy took my information, looked at the footage, and told me he'd pass it to the Forestry Service. Nobody called me back. The agency contact rescheduled the survey for a different management unit. No explanation given. No questions asked about why I'd requested the relocation. The footage is on a hard drive in my apartment. I've shown it to 2 colleagues. One of them said it was probably hunters doing something stupid. The other one didn't say anything at all. The survey data I collected during those 3 days, the transects, the camera counts, the sign assessment, say it was good data, solid. I wrote it up and submitted it, and it was accepted without revision. I've done 11 more contracts since then. Different states, different terrain. I still sleep fine in the backcountry. I still roll over when branches snap. But I've thought about that woman at the county desk more times than I can count. The way she watched the footage without reacting. The specific way she said wrong hollow. Not that area or that zone or that section of forest. Hollow. Like the word had a fixed meaning she'd used before. Like she knew exactly which one I meant before I'd finished describing it. I'm not a sentimental person. I want to be upfront about that. When my uncle died and left me 11 acres in the West Virginia mountains, my first call wasn't to a family member, it was to a real estate attorney. I'd met the man maybe 4 times in my life. My mother's estranged older brother, the kind of relative who exists only in the past tense of other people's stories. I didn't grieve, I processed. I made a folder on my desktop labeled WV Property, and I started making calls. That's who I am. I work in commercial insurance. I assess risk for a living. I don't believe in gut feelings. I believe in data, in patterns, in the kind of evidence you can put in a file and reference later. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that what I'm about to describe is not embellishment. I don't embellish. I barely even talk about this. But it's been 2 years and there are still things I can't make fit inside any framework I have. And at some point you either say it out loud or you carry it alone. I flew into Charleston in late October, rented a truck. My attorney said the roads back to the property weren't suitable for a standard vehicle, and drove about 2 hours into the kind of terrain that makes you recalibrate your sense of distance. The mountains out there compress space. What looks like a mile on a map can take 20 minutes on a road that was apparently installed by someone who felt strongly about switchbacks. The property itself sat at the end of a gravel track that wasn't on any mapping application I tried. I found it using handwritten directions my attorney had gotten from the county assessor. The land was a rectangle. 11 acres of mixed hardwood, a creek along the western boundary, and a collapsed structure at the far end that the assessor's notes described as a legacy dwelling, which is bureaucratic language for a building so deteriorated it no longer qualifies as a structure. I couldn't sell it without an assessment, and I couldn't get an assessment done remotely, so there I was. The contractor I found was named Dale. He came recommended by the county assessor's office, late 50s, the kind of man who's done enough outdoor work that he moves through terrain the way water does, finding the easy way without having to think about it. He met me at the property line at 8 in the morning, shook my hand, looked at the tree line, and got quiet in a way that I noticed but didn't assign meaning to. Not yet. We walked the front third of the property without issue. He took notes, photographed the creek boundary, assessed what the collapsed dwelling would cost to remove. Professional, thorough. Then we got to a point about 2/3 of the way back, a natural clearing where the hardwoods thickened into something older and closer, and he stopped. He didn't say anything for a moment, just stood there looking at the tree line ahead. "I can document what I've seen," he said. "That'll be enough for a standard sale." I asked him about the back acreage. There was a notation in the assessor's file about a second structure, possibly a smokehouse or outbuilding, somewhere in the rear section. He looked at me and said, "The people back there don't like strangers walking through." I waited for more. He didn't offer any. I asked him what he meant. Were there squatters, trespassers, some kind of encroachment issue I needed to know about for the title? He said, "Just don't go past that stand of beeches," and pointed at a row of smooth-barked trees about 50 yards ahead. "I'll get your paperwork done by end of week." He left 40 minutes later. I stood at the edge of that clearing for a while, processing the conversation, trying to make it mean something rational. The people back there. My best interpretation was neighbors, that there was adjacent property with difficult owners who'd had disputes with my uncle or with previous surveyors or with anyone who came near whatever informal boundary they'd established. West Virginia property disputes are not uncommon. People get territorial about land out here in ways that don't always map to legal reality. That was my working theory, and it was a reasonable one. I went back to my truck and got my phone out and looked at the satellite image of the property for a long time. Then I went past the beech trees. The rear acreage was denser than the front. The canopy closed overhead, within about 30 yards of the clearing, dropping the light from a flat October gray to something closer to dusk, even though it was barely 11 in the morning. The ground cover was thick, decades of leaf litter over what might have once been paths, now soft and silent underfoot. The smell was different back there, heavier, something organic and wet underneath the cold air, like turned soil or standing water, though I couldn't see any. I found the outbuilding after about 10 minutes of walking. It had been a smokehouse, stone foundation, collapsed timber roof, the interior choked with decades of growth. I photographed it, took my measurements, wrote my notes in the way I'd learned to be methodical, even when the rational part of me was already starting to process something I wasn't quite ready to name. It was on the way out that it started. I was maybe 4 minutes into the walk back toward the clearing when I became aware of movement in my peripheral vision, left side maybe 30 feet into the trees. I turned and looked and saw nothing definite, just the hardwoods and the shadows between them and the motionless undergrowth. I kept walking. 30 seconds later, right side this time, the same quality of almost movement, the kind of thing that could be a deer, could be wind in the upper canopy casting moving shadows, could be eyes. I stopped and stood completely still and listened. The woods had gone quiet, not gradually, all at once, the way a room goes quiet when someone walks in who changes things. No birds, no wind sound, no small animals in the leaf litter, just the sound of my own breathing, and underneath it, something I spent a long time trying not to identify. Footsteps, quiet ones, more than one set, keeping my pace, then stopping when I stopped. I started walking again, deliberately, and what happened next is the thing I've turned over more times than I can count and still cannot reduce to anything comfortable. They matched me. Whatever was in those trees, however many of them there were, they moved when I moved, stopped when I stopped, and maintained a distance that didn't close. Not pursuit, that's the wrong word for it. This wasn't predatory spacing. It was something more deliberate than that. Almost formal. I was being walked. I understood that without deciding to understand it. My body understood it first. The way my stride shortened involuntarily, the way I stopped swinging my arms, the way I became very focused on the clearing ahead and on moving toward it without changing pace. Because something told me, and this is the part I can't explain clinically, that changing pace would change the arrangement. And the arrangement, strange as it was, felt like it was currently in my favor. 30 feet on each side, moving through the trees in a loose, parallel formation. I could hear them. I could occasionally see them. Shapes that were the right size and the wrong kind of still, the way a person standing in the woods looks different from a tree trunk, if you know what to look for. I didn't look directly at them. I don't know why I made that decision. I just knew it was the right one. The clearing appeared ahead. The beech trees, I crossed through them and kept walking all the way across the front acreage, all the way to the gravel track, all the way to the truck. At the property line, I stopped and turned around. The tree line was still, empty looking, but at the edge of it, where the shadows started, figures, standing, not moving, not hidden, but not fully visible either, just present, watching me get in the truck with the same patient, organized stillness they'd maintained through the trees. I drove back to the motel and sat on the bed and looked at my hands for a while. Dale called me the next morning, said he wouldn't be completing the assessment, didn't give a reason, said I should find another contractor, and hung up. I tried twice to call back. He didn't answer. I hired someone from a different county who did the job by road frontage and aerial reference and didn't set foot past the clearing. I listed the property 2 weeks later, priced low because I wanted it gone. It sold in 6 days. The buyer never requested an inspection, not a single walkthrough, not a soil test, nothing. The closing documents listed a P.O. box as the return address. Same county. I called my attorney and asked if any of that was unusual. He was quiet for a moment and then said the paperwork was all in order and that some buyers preferred to move quickly. I didn't push it. I signed. I took the money. I've looked up that P.O. box. It's registered to a name I can't find attached to any other public record. No business license, no property holdings, no voter registration. Just a name and a box number in a county with about 4,000 residents. Whoever bought it, they knew what they were buying. They'd bought it before I listed it. I'm almost sure of that now. What I've never been able to resolve is this. Those figures walked me to the property line and stopped there. Every one of them. They stayed on that land. And whatever the rule was, whatever boundary they were operating by, they respected it completely, which means someone taught them where the line was